Hey guys, welcome back to Graybeard Garage. I'm Matt, and today we're going to be looking at something kind of interesting. I've seen a few of these on YouTube before, but this is one I inherited from my father-in-law. So we're going to take a look at this right now. And this is a 1991 Craftsman 5 horsepower chipper shredder, and it does run. Although it doesn't run great, and it does chip and shred, but it doesn't really do it great. So what we're going to do today, or in this series, is we're going to replace the carburetor. Again, we've ordered the finest Chinesium carburetor possible from Amazon. And then we're going to remove the chute, split the case, and we're going to replace the chipper blades and the shredder blades inside of here as well. So like I said, this is a 1991 unit, and it still runs. It still does it kind of decently, but I think we can make it better. So this is going to be our project we'll be working on. Alright, so one of the first things we're going to do is remove these 2 bolts and loosen up that third one down here, right there. So we're going to go ahead and remove this chute so we can gain access to our blades back there. So what we're using here is impact with an extension, and this is a 1/2 inch socket. So we're going to go ahead and get the chute removed right now. And there is also a washer on here that you'll want to collect as well. Maybe. Oh, there we go, nut washer. And we're going to put those back on the studs when we get the chute removed. The 2 nuts removed and the lower one loosened, we can just pull the chute right off. And what that does is gives us access down into here, and you can see that chipper blade is in there, and it looks like a Torx bolt. So we'll get that taken out, but first we're going to have to split this apart so we can get inside of here. Alright, so either that or we'll take the chute off in the back. Maybe we'll take the chute off and go in that direction first. Alright, so actually change of plan. I want to remove the guard, and then I'm going to pull these pins here, and then that pulls this guard here. And that way we gain access to everything. Alright, and so these nuts here are, if it's still factory, are 7/16 on both. And we're going to go ahead and get that pulled off right now. Alright guys, so like I said, these are 7/16 on both sides. So we're just going to go ahead and back these off. Whoop, there goes our nut. Alright, so we'll gather that up, and then we'll move on to our next step. So the next step in the process is we're going to remove this pin and this pin, which will release our guard inside of here. And these are held in by cotter pins. So we'll just go ahead and remove those like that. Alright, those pins should slide right out, although they seem to be kind of rusted in there. So let's go tap them out with our dead blow. Alright. There we go. And they slide right on out. So we'll go ahead and keep our pin with our little locks here together. There we go. We'll pull the pin from the bottom. Keep these together so we don't lose them. Alright, and then that will release the guard from the inside. And pay attention to how you take this out, because this is kind of a concave when it goes in, so you don't want to have it flipped over the wrong way. So you got to remember it goes in the way it came out, because it will make a difference. Okay guys, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to pull the chute off here. I want to make sure you guys can see that. So we'll go ahead and pan out a little bit here so you can take a look. So this chute right here, we're going to pull it off by removing the 1/2-inch bolts around there. Now what's going to happen is that stand is no longer going to be holding the machine, so it might want to flip a little bit on you, so just be prepared for that. You can put a piece of wood or a block or something under there to keep it from rolling backwards and rolling on your toes if you're wearing flip-flops. So we're going to go ahead and start taking off these bolts right now. And again, these are 1/2-inch nut and bolt, and they do have a washer on each one, so pay attention not to lose those. Alright. Okay, just to show you, I had to lean this kind of up, and I put a couple blocks under the front of the motor to block it in place so I can remove these lower bolts. Okay, so we have all of our bolts removed. So what we're going to do is pull this whole piece here away from the engine and the blades. It comes away just like that. Alright, looks like we got a bunch of crud left behind from the last time I used this thing. So we'll clean all that out and then we'll get into the next steps. Alright, so we got a lot of the junk cleaned out from the bottom here, and we're going to replace this blade. And you can replace these hammers, but these look to be in pretty good shape, so I don't think those need to be replaced at all. But these are kind of seized into place. These move a little bit, but they're not real freely moving, whereas these are pretty decent. Anyway, I'm going to get some PB Blaster on these and let it sit for a little while so we can loosen that up. And so those hammers will all swing independently. This kind of works like a flail mower in essence, where these will come around, they hit the debris and break it up even further. So we're going to go ahead and get that sprayed up with some JB or some liquid wrench or whatever, and then we'll spray these bolts here for these blades that go on the chipper, and then that way we'll be able to loosen those up a little easier as well. Alright, so I'm going to go get some of that and then we'll get started on the next step. Oh, by the way, as a side note, always disconnect when you're working on an engine. Alright, I may have said JB Weld, which would be completely counterintuitive to what we're doing here. What I meant was PB Blaster. So we're going to go ahead and just spray that on all the hammers. We want to get those nice and lubricated. I may pull them off and throw some high temp grease in there just to help them stay lubricated. And then we'll give these a shot. And then we'll give this a shot as well. Alright guys, so we'll let this rest for a few minutes and then we'll come back and attack these. Alright, so we've let the PB Blaster sit for a few minutes. This nut is a 9/16 if it's original in your machine, which this is original. So we're just going to go ahead and break that loose. Great, and that came off nice and easy. So pay attention here, there's a couple different washers in here. It looks like a big washer and a locking washer. So keep those somewhere where you won't lose them. And this blade should just pop right off. Now, maybe needs a little persuasion. Alright, so I brought a little persuasion with me. Well, that was easy. Alright, so we'll move on to the next step, and that's going to be removing these. Alright, so we've got the hammers loosened up pretty good. Shot them with some PB Blaster, had to knock them around. Had to use a little persuasion on them to loosen them up. So we persuaded them to work, and so now they seem to be loosey-goosey. So a lot better. So here's the shredder blades. So this is our original blade, and for whatever reason it's got a leading edge and a trailing edge, and I don't really understand that, but anyway, that's the old blade that we're going to replace with this new blade. Now this blade also comes with some bolts and nuts. Some of the models actually had a spot where you could fasten them here, but this machine does not have that, so we will not be utilizing that method. So this will go on here. The rotation is this direction, right? So we will go ahead and put our nut and washers back on here, and then we're going to remove these. So we'll go ahead and get that done. Alright, so we have our new blade fastened in. As I said, there's nothing here for these to bolt into. As you can see, there's my finger on the other side. And now we're going to go ahead and remove the old chipper blades. This is the back side, and then we'll show you the front side, and we're going to replace them with these brand new blades here. And they'll install just like this. This would be the side against this plate, and we'll go ahead and get that done right now. So to remove the chopper blade or chipper blades, you see there's a 1/2 inch nut, and then you need a T27 for the front of the bolt. So we will go ahead and get that taken care of right now. So we've got our bolts off, our nuts off, so we should be able just to push these through without any real problem. That one went through fine. This one's hanging up a little, so little persuasion. There we go. So we'll go ahead and get our new one installed, and we'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so we're getting ready to install our new blades. The new hardware is Allen, not torque. So this is going to be a 5. My Harbor Freight special here. So yeah, I guess it's a number 5 Allen. So we'll go ahead and get the new hardware installed with our new blade. And again, the blade itself, this is going to be on this side here. So we'll go ahead and get that installed. Alright guys, so I set the camera up a little differently so you can kind of see the front of the machine now, and then I'm going to go ahead and get this thing installed, and we'll be moving on to the next step here. Switch out to the Allen. Alright. So again, the plate is going to go this way, so you'll see how the cutting edge is, and we'll go ahead and get that installed. Kind of hard to mess up because the screw heads do recess in here. So we'll go ahead and put this in. And these new ones come with a locking washer and a nylon bolt. So I guess I really don't want these things to come loose. Alright. And let me find my other one here. Okay. Put our blade into place. Be careful not to cut yourself because that is very sharp. And these new bolts, nylon locking bolts, are 1/2 inch as well. The only thing changed on it really is the Allen side of it. So we'll go ahead and get that done. I think this nut and bolt are cross-threaded because they are not lining up correctly to go on. Alright guys, give me one sec here. Alright, so the nut, the nylon locking nut was stripped out or something because it would not tighten down at all. So I went ahead and used the old bolt, which is fine because we do have the locking washer behind it. we got our next one locked down. Man, I do not like these nylon bolts. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and go on to the next one, and we'll go ahead and spin our machine around here. And there you can see the old one from the front side instead of just the back side. So I'm gonna go ahead and back that off right now. Now this is the Torx bolt that was in the machine. And again, this is a Torx T27. So we're going to go ahead and pop these off. All right. So there we go. Pull our washers off. Again, these should just slide right out, which they do. All right. And there it is. There's the old one. There's the back side of it. So we're going to go ahead and put the new one on now. And I honestly think I'm going to reuse the old bolts because, I'm sorry, the old nuts. Because I like those way better than these locking ones they provided us. And again, we're going to lay the angled side against the plate. There's one. Here's number two. Okay. I am going to use the new locking washers. But I'm going to reuse the old nuts. And again, these are the new bolts. And so they are the Allen. We'll go ahead and get those tightened up. Alright, there we go. Nice and tight. Alright, so now we have our new blade in, our chipper blade and our shredder blade. We'll bring you around over here again to show you that. Okay, so here we are on the back side of the machine again. And let me go out. Alright, so we have our shredder, then we have our chipper blades and our new chipper blades installed. Next thing, we're going to put the housing back on to the back side, and then we're going to do a carburetor swap out. Alright guys, so here's our old blades, and there's the cutting edge of the old one. I don't think these things have ever been sharpened, but I had replaced them just in case, since I was tearing the whole thing apart. And I mean, I figured since 1991 they were probably pretty wore out, but they even have a bit of an edge on them still. So I'm gonna keep these and sharpen them, and I'm going to put them in my toolbox that I bring up to my property. And that way, if I ever dull out the new ones, I'll have some brand new sharp ones to put in there. It's a pretty simple process. As you've seen, I mean, there's really nothing hard about it. So we're going to go ahead and get the cover back on, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright guys, so I put the back cover on with the chute. And as you can see, I've only put a couple bolts in here to start. And that's just as a placeholder, just so I can get everything else put in. Once I get all the bolts in, then we'll go ahead and tighten everything down, and we'll start on the carb next. Alright, so as you can see, we've got all of our nuts and bolts back into the housing, all the way around and under the bottom. And remember, these are 1/2 inch nut and 1/2 inch bolt with locking washers. Next step in assembly is the guard that goes back in there. And again, remember, that protects from the hammers and, I guess, for stupid people putting their hands in there. So anyway, now these go in and we'll get that installed. Alright, so we've got our first pin connected in here, and we're going to go ahead and get that pushed through to the other side. Alright, so now we're through now. Okay, so we've got our pin pushed through. We got our pin, locking pin over here. And we're just going to go ahead and knock that into place. Alright, and then we'll get our next one installed below, right down there. So we got our pin there, and we've got all that lined up. So we should be able just to slide it right on through, and out the other side it goes. So we just need to put our pin in here, and we'll get that locked in. And we'll just give that a little love tap as well. From this side, right here. Love tap. There it is. Alright, so next mission. We're going to remove our air filter. Then we're going to get down in here and we're going to remove that carburetor and replace it with our brand new Chinesium Amazon Special. First thing we're going to do is remove the bolts in here, and to do that 5/16, and we'll get that taken off. Alright guys, now we've got that loosened up. Pull our air cleaner housing off, pull our air cleaner out. Actually doesn't look bad at all, so we'll be able to reuse that. Next thing, we're going to remove these 4 bolts here. And again, I think they're going to be the same size, so they are 5/16 as well. And I'm going to go ahead and get all those removed. Alright, internet magic. They're all out. Now we're down to the carburetor. Going to probably have to do some of remove these, remove our choke and our throttle cables or bars from here. And couple nuts here. Anyway, that's our next step, so we'll try and walk you through that one next. Guys, so what I'm going to do here is there's the controls here for your choke and idle, but there's 2 screws down in here. There's one here, and then there's one, oops, well, anyway, you can see it back here underneath this. We're going to go ahead and take those out. And then there is this here, part of the controls we're going to remove as well. That should open up everything else for us to go ahead and remove the old carburetor out of here. Okay, so with the 2 screws removed, that's allowing us a little flexibility here that we can now take this off and remove it out of the way, and we'll disconnect the wire back here from in here as well. Guys, so we've got our control panel out of the way. We're able to remove the choke, and now we're going to go back here, remove this, and then I think we should be clear to remove the carb from the block. So that's our next step. Okay, so we've removed our screw. Now we're just going to wiggle this off. Now that is out of our way. And next step, we're going to go in here and get those. Alright, so the bolts that hold the carburetor to the block are 3/8. So we'll just get those loosened up. Maybe. The top one was certainly easier than the lower one, so I am using a stubby wrench, so I may go and get my larger. Oh no, it broke loose. Alright, so not to bore you with seeing bolts turn, I'm going to get these off and then we'll move to the next step. So the carb's off the block. Next step is I have to take that screw out, which I missed, and then we should be able to be detached from the tank. Alright, so the carb's loose from the tank. I do need to remove here and here, and then this old carb will just come right off and we can put our new carb on with new gaskets and everything. Alright, so now we have the throttle control disassembled from our carburetor, and that was a 5/16, and that's just a regular screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver. Now we should be able to go ahead and just remove this, hopefully without losing too many other parts and pieces. Oh, we do have to disconnect from here. All right, so I have to disconnect here, and then we'll go ahead and pull that carb off. All right, guys, so unfortunately I think I'm gonna have to pull the tank completely off. Down at the base of the motor, if I can get this in here and show you, there's a 3/8 inch nut there, so we need to remove that, and that'll give us a little more wiggle room to get the carb out and to get it disconnected from this throttle piece that comes all the way down here. All right, so now we are going to start the reassembly process. Here we've got our throttle link up to here. We've got that installed, and we're gonna get our gas tank and feed that into the gas tank. All right, get our gasket here to seal the tank, and there's a gasket I believe they gave us for here, and there's this one. I think there's an old one on here, so we'll peel that off as well, and then we'll get the reassembly process started. So reassembly now, we have our carburetor hooked back up to this throttle here, this throttle cable. We have our new gasket in place. We have this adjustment here connected down to the tank, and now we're going to put the tank back on, set the carburetor in, and then we'll get everything all put back together. So step one, we're going to take our spring down here, and we're going to reattach it right here to this little T. So we'll get that connected, and then we'll come right back. So the lower support bolt has been started. Next thing I want to do is come back up to the carburetor, and we're going to put our gasket in between here and start the bolts there, kind of start putting everything back in place for final assembly. All right, so we have our gasket put in here, and now we started the bolt here on the bottom, and then we've got a bolt on the top started as well. So I'm going to go ahead and snug all those up, and then we'll finish up by snugging up the bottom as well. So we have our carb mounted to the block. Now we're starting to reassemble the throttle assembly here. This bracket, your L bracket here, there's a spacer. Remember, the spacer goes behind that bracket, and we'll tighten that up. And then there's another bracket we're going to put here with a slider in it, and we'll go ahead and get that installed now. Okay, so we have our bracket with the slide connected to the throttle here. Next step is we're going to put our clamp back on this side, our heat shield, and then we will come back to here, put our choke lever in, put our control panel back here on the front, and we should be. So we have our bracket in, our slide connected to the L bracket here. We also have put the vent tube back on here and screwed that down with the brace, as well as the heat shield here. And just remember, the heat shield goes behind this line here. All right, so next step, get our controls put back on the front, and we should be good to go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put our choke control in, and this control box here, and this is going to slide right in there, and then this slides back into position here, just like this, and that should line up with our holes for our screws, and then we'll put our screws in. So remember, before you get this thing mounted down, to reattach your wire here, and then we are ready to go ahead and put this back into the block. One thing you'll want to make sure of when you're reassembling this control panel here is to make sure that you get, I don't know if you can see it, but you get that pin into this bar, the hoop on this control bar here. Otherwise, you won't be able to control the off, idle, right? So you want to make sure you have that pin in there. Alright, so next step, go and get the air filter tray back on. We'll go ahead and get that done now. And then next, we're going to replace that. So the Amazon kit I bought actually did come with a new air filter, so we will use that instead of the old one. So we will replace the plug. Here's the original. It's not terrible. Not a lot of carbon buildup on it, but this is what they sent us with the kit, so we're going to go ahead and get that installed. Alright, new plugs installed. Everything's reassembled. And I'm going to put some gas in here and see if we can get this thing to fire up and see how she runs. Alright, so as you can tell, it's running at idle right now. So I'm going to go ahead and crank up the RPMs on it, and we're going to run some things through here and see what it does. Not bad. Alright guys, so that is kind of tune-up on a 1991 Craftsman chipper shredder with new shredder blade, new chipper blades, and a new carburetor. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Otherwise, hit that like button and subscribe to catch our future videos. And thanks again for tuning in to Graybeard Garage. And again, my name's Matt. We'll see you guys later.